Cthulhu Reborn presents.
Welcome back to the playtest of Physiology of Acquired Taste, an Age of Revolution scenario for Cthulhu Eternal. I'm your GM, William Adcock. To catch everyone up on where we left off, our heroes were hired to investigate a grave robbing that may have been politically motivated. They have searched through a couple different mortuaries and talked to various morticians, as well as looked into a rather curious case of an alleged werewolf in the city of Reims. When we last saw our heroes, they were learning that the first mortician they spoke to, the overworked Thierry Constantine, was presumed dead, and the mortuary he worked at had been cleaned out of bodies. So, Edmund and Jean-Paul, where would you like to go from here?
First off, I'm impressed that you're actually willing to call my character a hero.
I mean, if you want to treat that as a slip of the tongue on my part, feel free.
So, Edmund, I think we were talking about checking out the mortuary that's being cleaned out.
I believe so, yes.
So that sounds like the first thing to do, since that's the most recent thing that's happened, and we've kind of got the police off our back for the moment.
And I think we've exhausted our trail of the werewolf, too.
Yeah, I think that's correct. So let's see if there's any clues there.
Returning to Constantine's mortuary is an easy enough trip. The police have been all over the building already. The fireplace poker that was found bent and bloodied has been tagged and bagged in the period appropriate way, but you can see where there are blood stains on the tiled floor that were not there at the time of your previous visit. And as reported, all of the bodies that were brought in that had been found at the broken wagon are now gone.
Refresh my memory, were there other bodies other than the ones that were related to the wagon that had been found outside that farm?
I'm going to say yes. There was, we'll say 3 additional bodies, top of the 12 that had been brought in.
Now, are they missing as well?
Yes.
There's no bodies here.
Correct.
Well, I think we should do a bit of searching around, see if the police missed anything.
The blood, where does it seem to go from or go to? Can we tell?
It's less of a trail and more of a spray.
And wasn't also the coroner found dead? Or I
He was not found at all. He is missing along with all 15 bodies that were in this morgue altogether. It's a reasonable assumption, and the assumption the gendarmerie are making, that the spray of blood across the floor and coating the fireplace poker is the morticians.
Okay, so they are currently not entertaining the theory that the mortician made off with the bodies.
Or that whoever made off with the bodies added him to the collection.
Also guess that it may not have been the werewolf that did this, since it was probably a person that used the poker rather than a werewolf. Wouldn't need one.
And also, they seem to happen concurrently, roughly, right?
And also, werewolves don't exist.
Yep.
Yes, this seems to have happened last night while you were searching for the werewolf, which gives you a convenient alibi.
Like we'd ever be questioned.
Like we'd ever be able to actually pull off a crime like that.
As Duval pointed out, you are the last known individuals to speak to Constantine.
But removing 15 bodies would either take a while or take somebody with a lot more arms than us.
A work crew, almost.
Yeah, so maybe we can ask around, see if anybody saw anything out on the street, because there's no way that this could have been done quickly, you'd think.
No, and also, what looks to be the most likely point of removing the bodies? Is there like a wagon door in the back or anything like that?
Yes.
Where they would bring them in?
Yes.
And is that door currently locked?
It is unlocked currently.
Although that could have been done by the police too, we don't know. But I think that's also a good place to start our questioning, Jean-Paul.
Yes, sounds good. But first, perhaps look around inside. So maybe throw a search roll here or there.
Sure.
I've already failed mine.
Yeah, I'm going to focus my search around that door and just see if there's any scraps of clothing or anything like that.
Had succeeded.
So yes, Edmund, you do find fairly fresh-looking wagon tracks, as well as a series of odd, almost hoof prints in dirt around the wagon gate.
Why do you say odd? Or almost hoof prints?
So they're not horses' hooves or cows' hooves, oxen or anything like that. If anything, they remind you maybe more of a pig's trotters. But who would try to use pigs to pull a wagon? That doesn't make sense.
Does it look like whoever or whatever had the pig's trotters was bipedal or quadrupedal?
You know what? Just give me an intelligence roll.
Okay.
Both of us are just...
Both of you.
I succeeded in mine. Chad got a critical.
Oh, yep.
Critically intelligent.
Critical thinking.
So between the two of you, you can tell that whoever's hooves these were, that individual was walking on two legs and was walking alongside the wagon and around it rather than being tethered to it. Or I guess yoked to it is the correct term.
They weren't pulling the wagon.
Right.
So,
Yes, Sean Paul.
I think we can put paid to these ridiculous stories of werewolves. Clearly, it is devils.
Devils?
Cloven hoof. I always knew
course.
this country was descending into hell.
Of course, some sort of werepig.
Don't rule it out. Well, is there a trail of these hoof prints? Did they walk alongside the wagon for a period of time, or does it look like they go for a while and then maybe they got up onto the wagon? Or
It does look like the owner of the hooves got into the wagon when they left. There isn't a whole lot of trail to follow from the back gate to the next cobblestone street. It's kind of a dirt alleyway this back door opens onto.
And is the alleyway bi-directional? In other words, is it open onto two streets or just one?
It opens onto two streets.
And can we tell, based on the hoof prints, which way it seemed to be walking before they got on the wagon, we assume?
No. With your critical success there, it seems like they got onto the wagon before it left the alley, or before it pulled away from the mortuary.
They got on it and then...
so we saw the hoof prints like on the dirt floor of the mortuary itself, right?
Right.
Well, so what would devils want with a bunch of dead bodies? Surely the Dark One already has their souls.
Maybe he's going to use them to tempt more nuns.
Well, that doesn't help us to understand where these bodies went. And as I guess while there's many of these peasants, I guess, maybe deserve a proper burial, then certainly Desjardins, a loyal servant of the rightful king, deserves a proper reburial, wherever the person with the strange pig boots has taken them.
Yes, the pig boots.
Or perhaps would we imagine that in the street outside where this alleyway went, is there any logical other businesses on the streets that might have actually seen some unusual traffic go past?
Which street looks like it would have more witnesses, I guess?
Neither one looks more promising than the other in that regard. It is shops with apartments above, for the most part, in this neighborhood.
Or are any of the shops the sorts of things that might have been open late in the evening?
No. This area is more of the sorts of businesses that people don't want to think about as much. Tanneries, some of the lower class butcher shops, any sort of job that would have strong odors associated with the production of something.
The stinky district of Reims.
Right.
I'm guessing that might also make it difficult to find some people that live nearby that are willing to actually talk to us about something they might have seen.
Both of you give me a luck check.
I am lucky.
As am I.
As you are leaving the mortuary in search of a cafe to plan your next move, you both catch sight of a man who is immediately familiar, although it takes you a second to place him. Alexander, the young man employed as a door greeter at Guillaume's funeral home, is walking rapidly in your direction with a nervous expression on his face that kind of shifts towards relief as he spots you.
It seems like he's walking not just in our general direction, but toward us.
He does appear to have been looking specifically for you. And he approaches and says, gentlemen, I have something I have to talk to you about, and I believe it's urgent.
Well, I think the three of us should find a cafe somewhere, and maybe some croissants are in order. Some good chocolate.
He happily lets you lead him into a cafe, and once he has some coffee and a croissant in front of him, he opens the bag he's carrying and pulls out a small ledger, and he says very seriously, "You were speaking with my employer yesterday, and if there is a crime that he has committed, I do not want to be held accountable for it. I believe my employer has been selling bodies discreetly."
A horrible thing to be doing. Quite a crime. And this ledger proves that?
He slides it across the table to you. Opening it, you see it tracks a regular monthly payment of 100 francs over the past 5 months, paid by someone who is simply marked B, with the note "for prior arrangements." B is making payments of 100 francs to Guillaume, and out of this, Guillaume is making 2 payments of 10 francs each month, noted C and BR. Alexander points out that C and BR at least appear to be Claude and Bruno, a pair of workmen employed by Guillaume.
Yeah, they were the ones that they talked about that sometimes do grave digging for them.
And also just general moving services, I guess, as far as moving the bodies, right? Are they the same as it would transport, say, to a burial ground?
Yes. And as you flip through the ledger, a calling card falls out in front of you, bearing the name Dr. Simon Béchard and an address in the nearby commune of Courcy, but no other information.
Do either of us know Dr. Simon Béchard?
No, he is not someone you have heard of previously.
So presumably he could be the B that has been paying, although there are a few other people whose surnames start with B that we've also run into. Barringer was the subject of the werewolf attack.
That's true. Now, this nearby commune, how nearby?
It's actually just on the other side of the neighborhood where the werewolf attacks have been occurring.
Is it also in the general direction that the road that the wagon was found on might lead to?
Not quite. Like, it is north of Reims, but the wagon was found about 2 kilometers past there.
How does the location of communes line up with the nearest gate that would be closest to the mortuary?
You could conceivably find your way to Courcy from either end of the alleyway behind the looted mortuary.
Well, I guess Simon Béchard is another person we can pay a visit to, or maybe there's also the opportunity to go back and confront Guillaume with what we've found out, try and get him to fess up, I guess, although that might be difficult given the fact that he's not the easiest of persons to deal with. Do you think, Edmund?
I would agree with your decision there, JP.
Of course. Of course. Well, maybe let's hail another carriage and we can head to Courcy for a...
Have you ever thought of using your money just to buy yourself a carriage?
Well, I'm not using my money. That's the important thing.
I wonder if we could get those 2 thugs to drive us.
10 francs a go. I'm not sure we want to waste that much money. And I think they won't transfer you unless you lie very still.
Lie very still, yet.
So I think, yes, maybe a trip to Courcy and try to track down Dr. Béchard and possibly some morning refreshments as well. Sure, I know a good cafe or wine bar in Courcy that we could stop by on the way.
I'm sure they know you, too.
Possibly one of their better customers. It's a shame our money's already running out.
Yeah.
We'll have to go back and ask for some more.
You can easily get a taxi into Corsi, and you have the address. So it's not even a matter of asking around. You have the address to go to.
So I guess, do you want to start there?
Yeah, do we want to start there or just ask around with anybody? Because I'd like to know a bit more about what type of doctor this Dr. Bichard is.
Yeah, so we can go to Corsi and do the cafe.
The wine
crawl.
bar. Yep, definitely. The wine bar first. The Corsi Central Wine Establishment.
So you go to the wine bar, and how do you go about doing this?
Oh, I'm sure I'm very well acquainted with the general customs and etiquettes of wine bar discussions. And, well, I guess maybe just go up to the person that's serving and just order a couple of expensive drinks off of the purse that we've been given and sit down after they've been served and say, this is a beautiful town. We're here to visit a good friend of ours, Dr. Bichard. I'm wondering, do you know him?
The man serving drinks kind of looks you up and down and glances at the slightly more expensive than average carafe of wine that you've purchased and said, mostly by reputation, he's a local doctor treating various ills and whatnot. I think he has some special interest in treating drunks.
Oh.
There have been a couple evenings where he's sat around drinking little himself, but then towards the end of the night, he will collect a more drunken patron and escort them home.
Sounds highly suspicious. Has there been any stories circulating about him? It sounds a little bit like since I knew him, he may have fallen onto some more unorthodox habits.
The man scratches his nose and says, I would assume if you're his friends, then you would know better than I would.
Well, I cannot fault a man who likes the company of drunks. Can you, Edmund?
Well, I know you.
There you go. A fine gentleman. Okay, well, thank you very much, sir. I put some more coins on the table to thank him for his information.
Yeah, the coins do not stay on the table for long.
Fair enough. So, interesting that one of the things we noticed about Desjardins' body was that it had signs of gout, which I guess is interesting. Maybe he also was a little inclined to take a few drinks here and there. Anyway, interesting. Well, Edmund, what do you think? Do you think we should head on to Dr. Bichard's and pay a visit?
Perhaps surreptitiously.
You mean do a bit of a circuit of the outside of the house and see what we can see?
Yeah, or at least, from the road.
To see if he has any pig demons with him.
Yeah, or boots. I mean, maybe he's got fancy boots. Maybe this is all the rage in Paris. Pig boots.
Pig boots. I think this pigskin thing's gone too far. We'll go to the address, but we'll try and do it surreptitiously, maybe approach it from a direction where we're not necessarily going to be seen in, so we can do a bit of a recce of the house.
Is it a long walk from where we're at now, or do we need to take a cab?
No, it's comfortably walkable, even for Jean-Paul.
Okay. And I guess a lot of doctors, obviously, at the time did their work at their homes, but maybe we can find another doctor and just ask them about this doctor.
You can do that.
We can talk about your gout and your drinking problem. Yeah.
My drinking problem. You think you're trying to set me up as bait?
It's the red nose fit.
Maybe where you're from. In my circles, it's a sign of distinction.
You're a distinguished drinker?
Is there any other type? There's distinguished and extinguished. So do any of the buildings around here have signs and stuff hanging from them that say that they're other doctors?
No. Although as you walk down, you do quickly realize that the address on the card is a townhouse, and it does appear that Bichard lives above the clinic that he operates.
And is there a shingle outside that clinic?
Yes, there is.
And that shingle says?
Simon Bichard, Doctor of Medicine.
Not, healer of drunks, robber of graves, cavorter with devil.
Lover of pigs, yep. We'll do a once around and have a look at the back of the property as well, just to see if.
But if it's a townhome, what businesses are adjacent?
A tailor shop and a bakery are the two adjacent places of business.
Oh, I'm picturing it's sort of like a row of townhouses. Is that how it would be?
Yeah. Brownstones, basically.
As you are discussing plans and looking at the shingle in front of Bichard's door, an older woman pokes her head out of the bakery and greets the two of you warmly, saying, "Oh, are you here to see the good doctor? It's so wonderful that he's attracting patients from outside the immediate neighborhood, and it's so good that he's seeing regular patients again. You're going to love him. He is so gentle and compassionate, and his medical knowledge is without compare. I don't know why he stays here when he could have a lucrative business in Paris. I've seen him myself. He's a wonderful doctor. And so modest, too. And he really is just a paragon of community virtue."
We should introduce ourselves. So I'm Jean-Paul.
I'm Edmund. Now, you said his business is resuming again. Was there a lull in his clientele?
So she gives her name as Nellie and explains that he's reduced the number of regular patients he's seen recently due to his dedication towards broader community service. Specifically, she says, as she understands it, he is treating drunkards, working to cure them of their thirst for alcohol.
Well, it sounds very public-spirited.
Sounds very promising for you, Jean-Paul.
Yeah, so does he work with community people in any particular location, or does he see them in his surgery?
Right here in his clinic.
And he also sees local members of the community with more general medical matters as well.
Oh yes, he's treated my varicose veins.
That's okay, you don't need to show us. Well, he seems like a very public-spirited man. I'd be very pleased to make his acquaintance. But in the meantime, Edmund, is there any bakery items that we should be purchasing just to enjoy our luncheon before we visit the good doctor?
No, I don't think so. Do you think we should ask her about the werewolf?
We should maybe ask her about any strange comings and goings, maybe, if you can think of a way of doing that.
Madame Nellie, or Madame Nellie, I guess. You said she was older. You mentioned that you were glad to see that he was attracting customers from outside of the neighborhood, clientele from further afield. Have there been other new ones recently?
Well, just the two of you. Like I said, he's reduced his time with regular patients to perform his charity.
Now, with his drunkards, do you know if they're all coming from the neighborhood?
I'm not sure. I've noticed several times over the past few weeks the doctor bringing clearly inebriated men back to the clinic, and those men leave an hour or two later, standing tall, walking confidently, with no sign of their previous drunkenness. I had noticed that Dr. Bichard is sometimes paid these men after treating them rather than charge his usual fee. That's why I think it's community service. He's helping these men get back on their feet.
So Dr. Bichard here is able to heal them in the same visit?
Yes.
So he basically just helps sober them up quickly?
As far as she knows.
So I guess it won't be that big of a help for you, Jean-Paul.
Well, it's always good to be able to refresh, to be able to go back to the wine bar a bit quicker. So, Madame Nellie, in some parts of the nearby neighborhoods, we had heard some rather distressing tales of nighttime louts on the street. Has there been any problem in this neighborhood? It's a bit concerning to me and want to know whether I should make sure that I'm not out after dark.
She says, I had heard about something, but our neighborhood has been very safe. I haven't seen any strange goings-on.
And is it very quiet at night, or is there lots of comings and goings and wagons and the like?
It tends to be very quiet at night. You do have some wagons going by, businesses that you don't want going through in the middle of the day, that sort of thing. Tends to be pretty quiet.
I imagine that running the bakery or being involved with the bakery, you would be starting work very early in the morning, certainly before the sun is up. Have you ever seen the unusual traffic on the streets at that hour when there's few people out and about?
Nothing that I've seen, no.
Well, Edmund, now's your last chance for a baguette.
Madame Nellie, have you seen a wagon come through here recently? Maybe, would you say, Jean-Paul, within the past couple hours? Does that make sense?
Well, last night, I guess.
Or last night. But it's still early morning, I guess, or I don't know.
It is afternoon at this point, because you took your time at breakfast before going to see the police.
We took that right out of Jean-Paul's playbook?
You can't rush these things.
She confirms that she has not seen any unusual wagons. Actually reaches up and pats John Paul on the cheek, saying how sweet it is that you're so concerned about the doctor's well-being.
You are a delight, Madam Nelly.
Before we head in, Jean-Paul, why don't we just take a quick constitutional?
Yes, I think so. I think we should just have a quick look to see if there's a service road or something that runs behind this row of townhouses.
And a entrance large enough to quickly move bodies through.
Well, and even if the townhouse looks large enough to have a storeroom or anything in it, it sounds like it might not if it's just a house.
But if one side is a bakery too, I mean, that's going to require a large oven at least. And we aren't factoring in basements.
Is there a service road, Bill?
There is. There is also an entranceway for a coal cellar behind each of the buildings.
Like a coal chute?
Yes.
A very messy place to be. I'm definitely not going exploring that. My lacy sleeves will get all dirty. I'm assuming there's a back entrance also to the doctor's house or surgery.
There is, yes.
Does it look like there's been a lot of traffic around? Is it cobbled or dirt, the side road?
It is cobbled.
Do you think, Edmund?
I'm not sure. What is the back entrance like? Is it just a door? Standard man-sized door? Or?
Just a regular door.
Well, I think we should go talk to the doctor then, and if we can't spot anything interesting around here. Unless you want to throw some search rolls at the door of the coal chute to see whether there's anything interesting.
Yeah, we can. I'm curious if the coal chute is locked. Because if it's not locked, then we can slide you down it.
Yeah.
I did not succeed.
No, and I did not succeed either. But I don't think we would need to roll to tell whether it's locked. We'll just try and open it. I'm sure, Edmund, you're very keen to make a quick descent.
The coal chute is locked, and there doesn't seem to be any signs of unusual traffic around the back door.
I'm thinking that if he's buying bodies, he's not storing them here. But let us go talk to the good doctor and see what he's like. Now, you need to be on your best behavior. This is possibly a man of society, Edmund.
As should you.
I'll just laugh politely. All right, we'll go back around to the front and make a bit of a grand entrance to the doctor's surgery.
A bell over the door rings as you open it, and a man in his mid-40s, well-dressed, dark hair cropped short, and a thin mustache, is coming down the stairs. He welcomes you, but also says, "I'm sorry, gentlemen, but I can only see one patient at a time."
No. I think you misunderstand. We're not here as patients. We're here on behalf of a charitable institution that wants to reward you for your benevolence. Pray an interview with you to understand. We've heard tales from far and wide of all the wonderful things you are doing for the community here in Corsi. We wish to consider whether you may be eligible for some sort of grant from our organization.
Go ahead and... I don't know whether to treat that as a bootlick or not.
Sounds like a bootlick to me.
Yeah, it does.
I succeeded at a bootlick. I mean, I've got a big bag of money, so it's not completely a lie. That's a kind of charity.
So he buys it, hook, line, and sinker. Says, "Oh, gentlemen, please come in. My name is Dr. Simon Bouchard.
I'm Jean-Paul Lagois. My secretary.
A pleasure to meet you, gentlemen. And what organization are you representing?"
The Society for Temperance in Reims. Surely you've heard of us?
Oh yes, I think so. I do apologize. I've been quite busy with my work and perhaps not as knowledgeable as I should be on social goings-ons.
No need to apologize. I mean, we understand that you have been most industrious in your pursuit of good for the society of Corsi, and it's like we would like to hear more about exactly what it is that you've been doing. We've heard tales here and there from the locals about the amazing work that you've been doing, but we feel that the only way we could do justice to any potential application or claim is to hear it from the man himself.
He smiles and kind of squares his shoulders, and you get a sense that he's been maybe hoping and waiting for something like this.
Well, I feel glad to be able to give him some fake hope.
He opens up with, "What do you know of medical science, and specifically the glands and their secretions?"
Sounds like something more in my good colleague Edmund's line.
I'm now your colleague and no longer your secretary? I've been promoted.
I like to treat the help with some level of civility.
He launches into a fairly technical explanation of the endocrine system and how these tiny glands in the human body impact physical and mental acuity, and so many things are linked to the proper functioning of these tiny organs. He's hoping with his research into the human glandular system that curing drunkenness and such things will just be the beginning. And
pray tell,
with
what is this? What is the secrets of your method? We've heard some miraculous tales. Is it to do with these glands and the juices in them?
Oh, yes. Proper glandular stimulation can affect marvelous changes in the human body. I'm not yet at a stage where I can publish my work, and so you understand I'm hesitant to discuss things in too much detail in case of some, as of yet, unforeseen catastrophe with the work I'm doing.
I see that there's always a risk with any type of research, I suppose, but at the Society, we are obviously more interested in those that are pushing the boundaries of treatment and betterment of all society. So your work sounds very much in a similar vein to those that we would normally fund. But I fear that, Edmund, for your little report that you'll need to write, we'll need to have a little bit more detail about what exactly it is that you do to achieve this glandular stimulation, bearing in mind that we will keep this in utter confidentiality so that no other medical practitioners can claim that they are the inventors of this wonderful method that you have perfected.
He fidgets a little bit and says, yes, I understand.
Hypothetically, if I was a drunk, what would you do to me?
Leave you in the gutter.
He says, well, you see, alcoholism truly is a side effect of a deficiency of a man's, rattles off in this regards, but he comes to the point where he says, I've been working on a serum which applied to a man's endocrine system makes up for the deficiency that leads a man to drink. Unfortunately, I haven't been able to achieve real permanency, but with repeat injections, I'm finding these men, who are of course compensated for taking part in my research, desire strong drink less and less.
Well, this sounds like quite an advance, and our Society for Temperance would be particularly keen to understand if you ever did discover a permanent cure, because, well, apart from putting our society out of business, which I guess, perhaps put us on the streets, but I think it would certainly be to the betterment of society.
Could I trouble you to answer a few questions of my own?
Oh, please. I feel that my secretary had a few additional things.
Well, we can allow him to pursue with his questions, and then
Okay.
I can follow up with mine.
Very good, very good.
I show obvious deference to the social betters.
Such a good secretary. You don't know how many I went through before I found him.
And so while I do that, though, while I say that, I look at his feet.
Regular feet in very nice shoes.
Well, regular shoes, I guess.
Yes.
Checking for pig boots.
Yeah, obviously on the way out, Jean-Paul is going to be his usual clumsy self and step on one of those shoes to see if there's anything in the toes.
So, Mr. Langlois, do you find yourself prone to irritability in your daily moods?
Can I answer?
My secretary would tell you that I'm the most equitable person that there is on the face of this good earth.
I see. And do you find that your hands and feet get cold at night?
Well, only when I don't have a glass of sherry in them. Ha ha ha.
I see. And do you ever feel sluggish and tired after a meal and please pardon the indiscreetness of this inquiry, after lovemaking?
My good doctor, when you are my age, you will also understand that this is not an uncommon thing to feel sluggish in such a way most of the time. I envy your youth.
Oh, not at all. May I perform a brief physical examination?
Well, very well.
He feels your pulse at the wrist and puts his his fingers against where your jaw meets your neck and feels your armpits, and he says, I do not want to be the bearer of bad news. Please take this in the best possible way, but it does appear that you may suffer from a generalized lethargy of the blood caused by glandular deficiencies of a sort that affects many men, especially as they get older.
That's most alarming. I shall definitely take care to speak to somebody about a treatment for this malaise.
Well, I'm sure that the good doctor here is the expert par excellence with regard to treating these alcohol-related malaises.
I think, Edmund, he didn't say anything about alcohol-related.
I'm inferring from he would be diagnosing you with regard to his knowledge and experience, and his knowledge and experience is with curing those with the drunken habit.
Yes,
So-
but as somebody who is a dignitary from the Temperance Society, then you would know that I would never touch a drop. So he must be talking about something else altogether.
Oh, it must be then, yes. It
He
must
says,
be.
My treatment does energize the glands. Other test subjects have experienced an immediate increase in physical strength, stamina, appetite, libido, and mental acuity, with noticeably improved memory and cognitive capacity. If you would like, I would be happy to take you on as part of the test group.
A very attractive proposition that you put on the table, but maybe I should return another day for that particular commencement of treatment. My secretary and I have some urgent business to attend to today, but I believe those were the subject of his further questions.
Yes, I do have some additional questions just regarding your methodology, good doctor.
Certainly.
Now, you mentioned an injectable serum, correct?
Yes.
Without providing you with too much information, I am not a medical professional, and I have not trained as a medical professional, but do you inject that in the arm or in somewhere near an endocrine gland, wherever that would be?
I do prefer to do injections in the biceps. In some cases, I will go in through the armpit or even a buttock.
And that just varies from patient to patient, I guess, as the needs of their physiognomy dictate.
Yes.
And by the way, as this discussion's going, I'm getting paler and paler.
Now, obviously a man of your prodigious talents started somewhere, right? Your research into this, our members always love to hear the stories of how people came to join the temperance movement, because many of those in the temperance movement maybe didn't live all their life in a temperate manner, if you know what I mean.
Certain.
What brought you to wanting to help the drunkards versus, say, another ailment that might be plaguing society, like the royalists?
Well, I must admit, I didn't immediately seek out to treat drunkenness. It happened to be a convenient, perhaps straightforward, social ill to address. Shortly after finishing medical school, I enlisted with the Grand Army. I was present for the retreat from Moscow. The suffering I saw on that tragic march steeled my resolve to do everything I could to improve humanity as a whole. My serum today helps the drunkard. Perhaps in a few years, I will have developed a treatment for man's desire to go to war with his fellow man.
So you have even more noble goals in mind as you develop your skills and refine your techniques. That's very good. Where did the serum that you inject, where did your ideas for that come from?
There have been some fascinating research and experiments performed in Frankfurt involving testicle grafting. From there, I took inspiration to see if I could find a less invasive and less traumatic method of improving glandular health.
I have completely blanched by now, by the way.
So perhaps he can do some grafting with you, Jean-Paul.
No grafting required, I assure you. One question I had, sorry to interrupt you, Edmund. As I'm thinking through your amazing discovery, I'm thinking that our society would clearly benefit from the mass production of such a serum once it is perfected. To understand the logistics of that, we would need to understand what the raw ingredients for such a serum came from, I guess, so that we could consider the costs and how it would be best achieved to manufacture on a more industrial scale.
And I guess the corollary to that is, at this point, do you have any issues with getting the ingredients? You don't need to tell us what the ingredients are, but do you have any issues with getting those ingredients in the quantities that you need? Maybe that's something also that the society can help you with, because this obviously sounds like a very worthwhile endeavor.
He looks you both over. Edmund, I'm going to need a bootlick or a persuade, something like that.
You're not going to get it. Just comparing the skills real quick. It'll be bootlick. I guess he's not a big fan of the carouse skill, is he? Oh, there we go.
Oh, you got a success on your bootlick.
I've learned from watching Jean-Paul.
He looks you both over, his facial expression growing a little more grave. He explains that he has a ready source of his primary ingredient. He has comfortably made arrangements for delivery at regular intervals.
Well, that is excellent news. That means that any money that the society can provide to you can be used towards spreading the word of your cure and, helping more and more people get the cure. Since you already have all the supplies you need, we don't need to invest any money in that.
I was thinking, though, Edmund, let's say this is such a miraculous treatment. We would like to double the production of your serum. What cost would be involved in that? You obviously have enough supply for your own experiments, but let's say we wanted to have you see twice the number of people.
He scratches his chin and said, I would have to discuss matters with my suppliers. I would not be willing to increase test subjects dramatically like that at this point, not until the serum is perfected.
I think perhaps you're too humble. This sounds like a most remarkable scientific discovery. I think, Edmund, that we should be approaching the council to try to get funding to maybe have another research assistant come and join you to double your progress. This clearly will be the betterment of all France.
No, it's too soon for that. No, the serum needs to be perfect before anyone else can become involved in the process.
At the risk of perhaps seeming to pry over much, in what way is it not perfect now?
It is impermanent, as I said, requiring fortnightly injections. Efforts to strengthen doses to decrease the frequency have had some unexpected complications.
So now when you say it's fortnightly injections of your serum into your test subjects, are we looking at like a slow march towards progress anyway, where maybe it's fortnightly for a while and then maybe it can be every 21 days? Just slowly and surely move toward a point where there is enough of the serum in their system that they don't have the problem anymore.
That's what I've been hopeful for. I'm not there yet.
It will certainly be a wonderful achievement once you make it.
I believe so as well, and the Society for Temperance at Reims will be the first to hear about my triumph when it comes.
Excellent. Perhaps, Jean-Paul, you might like to leave a calling card, should he require to become in contact with you.
I thought that this was my secretary's job to carry my card.
I seem to be fresh out.
Oh, well, we shall return. We shall return with details and perhaps also some more questions. I feel that our application for some sort of benevolent grant is most likely to succeed, but we may wish to have some additional information, the source of your inspiration. And I think even if it's just to write something, Edmund, for our newsletter, this would be an amazing story. Even just to hear of a little more of your inspiration from your march with Napoleon and what you actually saw on those harrowing days and how it actually had inspired you to create this amazing scientific advance would be something that our readers, it would inspire many more donations to the cause, which would then allow us to be even more generous.
Both of you give me an alertness roll, please.
Oh, I did. Chad succeeded.
No, you did not. Yeah.
No, I didn't succeed.
Nope.
Edmund, you notice when Jean-Paul is talking about the things that Bichard saw on that harrowing march, Bichard gets a 1,000-yard stare. He seems to be looking straight through the two of you and through the wall behind you without seeing you. But as Jean-Paul winds down his spiel, Bichard kind of snaps back to reality and very politely mentions how wonderful that would be and begins to gently usher the two of you towards the door.
Okay, so I guess we follow his lead
Yes, we do
and
that.
let him lead us out.
We shall definitely be in touch. Keep up the great work.
Eddie shows the two of you out and then gently closes the door behind you.
So, Edmund, what do you think of that?
If I learned nothing when I was in Martinique, I learned two things. Bakeries use flour, and flour is explosive.
You think there's a way we can find a way back into his premises tonight with some exploding pies?
Once you cook the flour, it's not as explosive. Surface area to oxygen ratio changes.
Well, it's wonderful what advances they're making in the colonies.
We can blow stuff up.
And it's not a role-playing game until you discuss ways to blow things up.
Now, while we were in there, I'm sure we looked around and not just at the doctor. Was the ground floor just like one big room? Because he came downstairs.
Right. He kind of met you in a little bit of a lounge area, almost like a waiting room.
Like a sitting room?
Yes. And you did notice that there were examination rooms off to your left. Or at least an examination room.
And now, could I see straight back to what I thought would be the alleyway behind? Or were there rooms in the way?
Rooms and a bend in the hallway.
So not like a shotgun style.
Right.
What are we thinking, Edmund? Sounds like there's some connection here to me.
I think there is a connection. I wonder if maybe we just surveil the location. He said he gets regular shipments, and my concern is with the recent shipment of, 16 bodies? 13 plus 3, right?
I don't think that there's anywhere near enough space for him to be able to do that here. I think maybe it's the case that he's got some other place, like a warehouse, that he keeps the bodies, and that's where the cart was going, out into a different direction.
Yeah, that's a very good idea. Maybe he just examines and injects here, but he has a laboratory and storage area somewhere else.
Given the man's obsession with glands, and you probably know better than me, but glands are not very large once removed from a body. Maybe this is what he takes. The ghoulish task of deglanding the bodies happens elsewhere, and he brings back those gentle fleshes to this location to maybe mix up his noxious brew. It feels to me that perhaps his concerns about problems with what had happened when he tried to increase the dosage must surely be related to the werewolf stories.
Right. Or maybe that's the not so much increase in the dosage as when maybe they come down from it, which is why they need the regular shots to keep from manifesting whatever they are manifesting.
It did seem like perhaps whoever had stolen the dog from the poor young girl must have had some sort of superhuman strength. Maybe this glandular injection was somehow what had granted them that as well.
And also, if you remember correctly, we found some currency in the backyard, side yard, where the attack occurred. That could have been their payment for their shot.
That's very true. Lost their sense in being taken over by the foul serum. It does make some sense.
And it could be unnecessarily so much so that they dropped the money because they lost their sense. It could just be that they were in a hurry to flee and the money fell.
I guess, but it did sound like they may have actually killed the dog as well in that process. So, but it definitely feels to me as though there should be some connection.
Do you think perhaps we should surveil this residence? He probably gets bodies infrequently. I'm sure 16 will last him a while, but if he does work at another premises, like you suggested, he's going to have to go back and forth much more frequently than he would have to have a shipment of bodies come in.
Yes, indeed. Indeed, that is true. And maybe our dangling some money in front of him might also entice him to accelerate things a little bit.
And also, I think the idea of injecting you just to see what happens is a good one.
I'm not Sure. I was on board till the testicular grafts, to be honest.
Well, that's where it started, you know? I mean, he's moved on since then.
The other thing I was going to suggest, since he seems to have been particularly disturbed when we were talking about his time with Napoleon's army, is there any way we could try and consult some records to find out exactly what he did in his service and what part of the army he was serving with, and whether there was a chance that he might have run into some unusual character that had given him some information that has inspired this work?
So that sounds like something that your old friend Christophe Augustin Gautier could help you with.
My administration of 80 also might be a good place to start. So maybe we can split up, Edmund, and you stay here and keep an eye on the premises here. And maybe since you have such an obsession with flour, you can have a bit of a liaison with Madame Nelly. And I'll go back and talk to our government types to find out a bit more about the doctor's time with the army.
That sounds feasible. What's across the street?
A few more townhouses, various small businesses.
Do they look occupied? Or?
Yes.
Would it look like any of them are for lease at the moment? Because we do have a big bundle of coins. We could just hire one, like a place across the road, and use the upstairs as a window to watch out.
Give me a luck check, Dean.
I got a critical success on my luck check.
So, there is an open townhouse. You are able to track down the landlord fairly easily and make arrangements to rent the space for the time being.
There you go, Edmund. There's a place with a fireplace as well, so you won't have to be so cold in your surveillance.
And I guess also to carry along that theme, what was the overall temperature like in the doctor's office?
Comfortably room temperature. Like, it didn't seem unusually warm or cold.
And now from this vantage point that Jean-Paul has so kindly rented, can I also see where wagons might access the alleyway?
No, because you're across the street from the front of the townhouse. You have a great view of his front door and presumably the front windows of his home above.
Also, I guess, while Jean-Paul goes and checks on any military connections with Mr. Gautier, he will also leave me francs in case I need them.
Yes, and maybe I would suggest you also purchase a spyglass, perhaps.
I'm sure those are readily to come by in this small commune.
Find a sailor. I'll keep an eye out. I'll bring you one back if I spot one in a good optical store.
I guess as a cartographer by trade, would a resources role possibly allow me to have a small one?
Yeah, go for it.
I'm looking for the resources on the character sheet.
It's at the bottom next to...
Bottom.
Yeah, probably go with the...
At
resource.
hand?
Yeah, I guess.
No, I don't have it with me. I unchecked it so that I've only...
And if it's a success.
Okay. I checked it back. Yeah, that was not a success, but it wasn't a fumble.
True. I'm not sure what a fumble would look like for a resources roll, but it'd be quite interesting to think.
I have one, drop it and break it.
Yeah, that would probably work.
You discover a hole in your bag and everything has been scattered.
Yeah, that's probably also a fair outcome.
Or the rare spyglass eating mite.
Which would you like to look at first, Bill?
Let's do Jean-Paul first.
So I'll go back and talk to
Gautier.
Christophe Gautier. I'll give him a bit of an update on what we've done so far and all the amazing progress we've made and how it's practically, we've already come up with all of the information we need. But one of the things is there's this doctor that somehow seems to be involved with things, and his time in the army might actually be helpful. Add some additional trifling pieces of information to the final picture, which we're almost got together anyway. Would he be able to help us with access to the relevant records?
Certainly, although it will take perhaps a couple days to get the information from the archives in Paris.
Can I ask that you write post haste to expedite the matter, and I shall check back later?
Certainly.
Would there be any more local records kept about this particular doctor and his activities in Reims, perhaps, that I could look at while I'm here also? Maybe find when he was registered or such? Or would that be also kept in Paris?
Go ahead and give me an administration roll.
A success. This is my strongest skill.
You'd put in the legwork and check around in a few places. You find that Bichard has been practicing medicine here in Reims for probably about 10 years now.
So was he a doctor before going to war or only after coming back?
Before.
Okay.
He had just graduated medical school and gone into service.
Do I find anything else in the records about any concerns or issues or complaints made against him that might have been lodged with the government or the regulatory parts of Reims?
No, but you do find that right before the July Revolution, he had purchased a wagon and 2 mules.
Shame they don't have registration plates.
You do recall it did not seem that he had any place at the townhouse to
that he
keep
could
a
park
wagon
them.
and 2 mules.
So does he own any other property in his name?
Not that you can find any record of.
That is unusual.
Around the same time, he had made some requests for surveyor's maps, specifically spanning the last 50 years.
Or any particular region?
Reims and surrounding environs.
Fairly large scale, right.
Yes. It looks like there was a series of requests, each one asking for an older map.
And so what was the oldest one that he requested?
The oldest one he requested dated back to shortly before the revolution.
Okay.
The big one.
That's like about 50 years ago?
Yes.
While I'm here, I also go into the records and have a look at any records about Gio and whether or not he owns any other property outside of Reims, particularly in the countryside to the north. Warehouse or storage.
Give me another administration roll.
One is also a success.
Nothing that you can find.
Well, that's probably enough poking around in records. It's going to have taken me hours already.
Yes. Cutting back to Edmund, shortly after nightfall, you've been maintaining your vigil for a couple hours now, admirably supported by Nellie's baked goods. And as I said, shortly after nightfall, you notice a large man in a dark coat approach Bichard's door and knock with a great deal of urgency.
Is this like a greatcoat type of situation? Neck to ankles type?
Yes. You can see Bichard open the door and greet the man, but you can't make out what the conversation is. Judging from body language, it seems like Bichard is confused by the man's presence, but the man seems he's asking Bichard for some form of urgent help. And Bichard invites the man in.
Which direction did he come from?
South.
But I assume I'm not going to be able to get in, so I'm just going to watch to see when he leaves at this point.
Give me an alertness roll, please.
Nope.
The man leaves 20, 30 minutes later. You notice he is visibly walking straight-backed, and there's a spring in his step that wasn't there before, and he seems much more relaxed.
The visitor?
Yes. Bichard stands in the doorway watching him go for a few moments. And you see him kind of lean against the door frame and pound his fist on the wood in frustration before closing the door.
Is it light out or is it dark out at this point?
Dark out. It's maybe an hour and a half past sunset.
So dusk, really? I'm not going to approach the doctor at this point. That might be a little suicidal. So I'm just going to keep watching.
Nothing else happens. Jean-Paul, are you going to be reconnecting with Edmund?
I absolutely will. I'll probably, once I finish my researches, and I guess everything will close up anyway, I'll just stop by and have a very large dinner and a bottle of Beaujolais, and then I shall return back to the townhouse.
All right, so you arrive back at the townhouse, let's say 45 minutes after the big man left
So
Bichard.
did I notice anything on the carriage ride back? Anything unusual, like rioting on the streets or strange men walking around with giant coats or anything unusual that I might have noticed in my only semi-drunken haze?
Actually, you know what? Go ahead and give me a luck roll.
No, that is a failure.
You notice nothing on your way back.
Unsurprising. I'll shamble up the stairs of the townhouse and say, Edmund, you missed a fantastic dinner. Best snails I've had all year.
I will explain that while you were gone, a large man did visit Bashir's clinic and was agitated. Bashir took him inside. He emerged later much calmer, some might say with a spring in his step, but Bashir was obviously distressed. He was banging his fist against the door frame. He had his head hung low. So I am assuming that this was one of his patients who was the serum was running out, had to get a new injection. Perhaps it's even sooner than Bashir was expecting. So that's why he is upset. But that is assumption on my part.
The other possibility is that this man is some sort of collaborator, that maybe his distress was the news that the theft of some of these corpses has been discovered.
That's what I thought at first, but then my mind moved to the other theory.
Certainly seems like he's had an injection of something, right? This man in the dark coat. So maybe I'll pass on the information that I got about Bouchard's history and his purchase of the wagon and the mules, and also that he had a strange interest in purchasing old maps, older and older, which is a bit unusual as well, as if he was perhaps looking for something that was in the vicinity of Reims a long time ago, before the First Revolution, which is a bit unusual for a medical practitioner.
Yeah.
But I'm also wondering if he has some time ago, in fact, just before the most recent revolution, he purchased the wagon and the mules, yet he has no place to store wagon and mules. It must mean that he has a location elsewhere, as we were supposing. But where exactly that is and how we might find it, I'm not certain. But I'm wondering if perhaps this man that you saw may have been a collaborator that actually operates out of that location.
And that was my initial thought. But the fact that he was so large made me think of the descriptions of the werewolf.
But I'm wondering if perhaps the two are connected. Maybe this man, his collaborator, has actually got the good doctor to produce this serum, but then the doctor has been doing his own experiment, which has gone horribly, horribly wrong.
And that's possible. Or maybe that's how his partner became involved, is he received the initial injection and is now addicted.
Those are all good theories. I have requested information about his war service, but it will take some days for the message to reach Paris and the response to arrive also. In the meantime, what can we do you think?
I think the man in the dark coat is too far gone to try to follow at this point. Did you perhaps see him on your way into town?
I did not.
No.
Makes me wonder, what happened to the man that was running rampant the other night with the werewolf? Has he come back, or is he still out there coming down from this overdose of serum? Bit of a question.
So the rest of the night will pass uneventfully for you. In the morning, it does make citywide news that the werewolf of Reims was cornered and shot to death last night.
Oh, okay.
Does it say where he was shot?
In La Nouvelle.
So near Barringer's?
Yes, near Barringer's. Nouvelle is the name of the neighborhood. It took 6 bullets at fairly close range to put the creature down.
Did we get the sense that the mortal remains of the werewolf were taken to the police morgue?
Yes.
Well, that's something we can look at.
Is anything happening at the doctor's office right now?
No, all quiet.
So I suppose we'll grab some food at the bakery and then summon another carriage to take us back to the police morgue. Though, have we been there before? To the police morgue?
No, you've just been to
the other two morgues.
Yes, this is a morgue-heavy scenario.
I feel that we'll be able to write an entire guidebook to morgues in Reims by the time we finish this scenario.
The original Baedekers.
Or Dead Deckers.
There you go.
You present yourselves at the police morgue and bribe the attendant appropriately.
Mm-hmm.
And he lets you in to see the body of this strange creature. It does appear human. The body resembles a large, muscular man, unkempt and unshaven. He showed up in the morgue wearing only a pair of trousers. He has a long lantern jaw, and his teeth are just a little too big for his mouth, so they project past his lips, both the upper and the lower set of teeth. The canine teeth are larger and sharper than they would be in a ordinary person, and there are a number of bullet wounds across his torso.
Does he facially resemble anybody that we've seen before in a loose sense? Obviously, it's been distorted into this animalistic look, but does it any of the features remind us of anybody we've seen?
No.
And is he particularly hirsute?
Not outside what you would expect to see from an adult man. Maybe in Alec Baldwin or Robin Williams territory, but not unusual beyond that.
I didn't know that was a scale, but yes.
It is now, apparently.
You are 0.1 Robin Williamses.
Or 1.1. This will probably take a search roll or something, but are there any injection marks, like in the biceps or in the other places you mentioned, such as the buttock?
Yes, go ahead and give me a search roll.
Okay, and while I do that, Jean-Pierre, did you want to check for the testicular grafting?
I was going to check for the testicular grafting specifically. Thank you very much for reminding me, Edmund.
My search was a success.
You do find signs of a repeat injection point at the left bicep.
Height-wise, how is he height-wise? Does he seem exceptionally tall or just...
No, probably 5'8", 5'9".
Oh, okay, so, yeah, for the period, pretty normal.
I'm gathering that he's a lot smaller than the guy that Edmund saw last night.
Hard to tell because of the coat, but Edmund, the man you saw, had a full beard and was otherwise bald.
And also, I was viewing him from an angle above, so that would change, my perspective on how I saw him, how tall he looked too. I don't think the doctor had one of those graduated tape measures by his door so I could identify how tall the suspect was.
No, but the hair and beard don't
Baldness
match.
and beard, yeah, right. Well, there's the werewolf mystery solved. I'm gathering he doesn't have pig trotters.
No.
Normal feet.
Yes.
Still looking for our pig feet, man.
And you said he's wearing trousers, blacks?
Yes.
Anything in the pocket?
Not currently, although the attendant does mention that he had a wallet on him that the police took with them after dropping the body off.
Yeah, so he could have had a card for the doctor, and we don't know.
And he could have had 5 francs for his latest payment as well.
Yep. Well, some of those have been spread across the grass in the side yard.
I reckon he's gone back for another treatment.
Oh, you think so?
Maybe. Only hypothetical, maybe.
Actually, I was incorrect. His feet are twisted into appendages more closely resembling a pig's trotters.
Okay.
Ah,
Maybe we have found
their nuts.
Pigfoot Man.
Pigfoot.
Everybody's favorite cryptid.
Pork squatch.
The attendant offers to show you something else interesting.
Sounds like a leading question for a morgue attendant, but yes.
Yeah.
You want to see something really scary?
He dims the lights in the room and lights a candle. Holding one of the eyes open, he brings the candle close, allowing you to see that it's reflected like a cat's would be.
Reflecting the light so that it basically is, they wouldn't know this at the time, but have low light vision.
Yes. Yeah, the eye seems to glow in response to the candle being brought close.
Well, I think this guy's got a lot more wrong with him than just drunkenness.
Yeah, but what came first?
Well, the temperance people will tell you it's a slippery slope.
You start drinking, and not long after that, you start transforming into a pig-footed cat man.
Well, like a dog man, really, with the big jaw and the canines.
Then also the hyper-reflective eyes.
Definitely not a good advertisement for Pernod.
I guess the question is, you get the excellent vision of the cat, you get the strong jaws and teeth of the dogs, but what do the pig feet get you, really, other than, extra shoe wear?
It is hard to imagine what the advantages of pig feet might be.
Any other animalian traits? I'll ask the morgue attendant. Anything else that's weird?
The arms are disproportionately long, almost ape-like.
Have they done an autopsy or a post-mortem?
No. Cause of death is pretty clear.
I was just wondering whether perhaps he'd eaten anything or anyone.
Or any dog.
Or any dog.
So he's got the orangutan-like arms that we saw in the creature too, right?
Okay.
So did your search turn up anything, Jean-Paul?
I didn't try, but I shall now. But my search is not very good. It's a fumble.
So as you go to undo the trousers on the corpse, the attendant stops you and says, "You haven't paid enough for that."
We're not that kind of morgue.
Uh,
I'm sorry, with a fumble I had to.
my reputation has been sullied. I almost feel like I have to duel now, but no time. My good honor has been besmirched.
Tomorrow's headlines. Jean-Paul Langlois.
Found.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, the gutter press has got to find something, don't they? And I guess they start looking in the gutter. Edmund, well, this explains, I guess, one part of the mystery, but perhaps not the larger part.
Yeah, I think we found our werewolf with these injection sites.
Yes, I feel that we found Dr. Bouchard's experimental failure, I think.
Well, I think all of his experiments are failing, and I think that's the problem.
Well, there's only been the one werewolf so far, though.
So far.
We probably should put a stop to that, don't you think?
Yes.
It still doesn't give us any clue as to the original point of this investigation, which is to
find out where the bodies went.
Find out where the bodies went and who was actually taking them. I feel that he must have an accomplice that took Desjardins, but I don't know how we would track down such a person. And maybe you did see his accomplice. You think that he'll come back again?
I imagine he will. I mean, I guess it all depends on how frequently he needs a shot. Now, your friend here at the morgue, would he let you take this body?
Not after he's found me like this, he won't.
Or maybe he will.
He already said that our credit had expired, unfortunately. I can try and harangue or bootlick him into doing that, but that could just cause an even greater scandal if I fail.
Yeah, that could cause a huge scandal for you.
For us, yes, I agree.
Because I didn't know if we were going to, quote-unquote, weekend at Bernie's him. Take the body with us back to the doctor.
Right.
Have him propped up between us when we knock on the door.
Do we need to, though, or can we just confront him and say that we know what's going on? Or, in fact, confront Guillaume, tell him we know what's going on and actually get him to spill the beans on where it is that he sends his wagons?
Well, Guillaume, as a respectable member of society, much like you, is probably much more open to pressure like that.
Yeah.
Yes. Might be easier to twist his arm.
Or bribe him, perhaps. I mean, we could probably get some more coins from... Maybe that's something we can do before we do the weekend at Bernie's. Unless you have another idea.
No, I think going to Guillaume is the first place. Do you need to tip the morgue attendant a little extra to forget what he saw you do?
Sure. I'll give him what's left in the pouch and we'll go back to Gautier and plead that we need some additional funds. He did say that we could ask for more money.
Yes, he did. He kind of gave you carte blanche.
With the sort of expenses in terms of those expensive bottles of wine, they're not going to go very far, really.
And I don't think he asked you for a receipt.
That's right. No itemized expense. Big mistake. So do we have any trouble getting another coin purse from Gautier?
No problem at all.
We'll do that, and then we'll head out to Guillaume's.
So you present yourself back at Guillaume's funeral home. Alexander greets you at the door again. He gives you a very serious look, a grave look, you might say. He kind of quietly asks the two of you what is going on.
We need to talk to your employer to find exactly where it is that he was shipping these bodies, unless there is further information in the records that you have access to that we don't need to inveigle the details from him.
He does not have any details about where the bodies go.
Well, in that case, your boss needs to be persuaded into giving up some additional secrets. And I think with the possibility of financial ruin for his business.
Alexander leads you back to the office, knocks and opens the door and says, Mr. Yo, the two men from the other day are back. They have some further questions for you.
Mr. EO, I feel that you were not very straight with us when we spoke last. I feel that you have slighted us by almost claiming ignorance in this matter of the missing corpses when in fact you had deep knowledge of some of the practices that your business was involved in. Like with my associations with the city of Reims, were such facts to come to light in a broader context, then it may not be the best for your reputation or for that of your practice.
He looks at you awkwardly and says, I don't know what you're talking about. And
I'll thump the ledger down onto the desk. Would you care to explain these transactions that we've already notified the city of?
His face goes through a surprising number of colors. white, gray, green, red, as he contemplates what you have just said and the book in front of him, and he finally manages to squeak out, "What do you want to know?"
I think what we want to know is who is the person that is purchasing these cadavers from you, and more importantly, where is it your men are told to transport them?
We don't ship the bodies anywhere. The agreement is 2 bodies a month to be collected by an agent of Dr. Bouchard's at the end of each month. My understanding is that he is an educator, and the cadavers he was buying were for anatomical study.
Look, don't try to sell us on some other falsehood, sir. We know that these payments here to Claude and Bruno, I guess, were for the transport of the corpses, and there's considerably more than that number that you were talking about.
Payments to Claude and Bruno are for loading the bodies into the wagon that comes each month and keeping their mouths shut. I assure you it's nothing more than that. I don't know where the bodies are going.
I don't know. Do you believe him, Edmund? This man's future is held within our hands right now.
I hope he understands the gravity of his current situation.
I feel that he may be more motivated to help us to discover the final destination of these bodies.
That's right, and perhaps not reveal to any of his colleagues that we've spoken to him.
That would also be, I think, in his best interests, just hypothetically speaking.
He is just quivering in his chair. Give me insight rolls, please.
Nope.
I accidentally did 2. One of them failed and one's a success.
I'll take the success.
Okay.
You can tell that Guillaume is being honest with you at this point, that he doesn't know where the bodies go. He knows that the law was being broken in regards to even bodies for anatomical study. Like, that is very strictly regulated. But he was paid enough to not ask questions.
So what's he going to do to try to help us? That's my question to him. I'll accept that this information was actually withheld from him, but how does he think he's going to make this right?
He just stares up at you and...
I don't know, Edmund, this doesn't feel like the man's motivated at all.
No.
When is the next scheduled pickup?
End of the month.
How far are we into the month? Probably the beginning of the month, aren't we?
Yeah, like a week and a half into November.
Okay, so that's not going to help us.
And your associates, are you still going to stick to the claim that they only help him load the wagon?
Yes.
Should we talk to Claude and Bruno just to see if they'll confirm that?
Yeah, I think we need to speak to Claude and Bruno. How often are they here now?
Yes.
Well, maybe Mr. Yeo, you should take us and instruct them to be very cooperative with us if you value your continued business.
He awkwardly rises from his chair and leads you to Claude and Bruno. Claude is tall, in his early 50s. Bruno is short, heavy-set, round, drink-reddened face framed by curly blonde hair. They're playing cards when you show up to talk with them, and Guillaume says to them, "Gentlemen, these 2 men know all about the special arrangement that you 2 and I have with Dr. Bouchard. In the interest of all 3 of us staying out of jail, I suggest you answer any questions they have honestly."
So maybe Claude and Bruno, you could describe to us what happens when you meet up with this wagon and whether there's any identifying information you have about those that come in the wagon.
The wagon is pulled by a mule. There is the same driver every time.
And his name is?
Neither one of them know his name. Bruno actually opines that it might not actually be the same man each time. He's always bundled up in an overcoat and a thick scarf with a broad-brimmed hat pulled low over his eyes. So,
is he balding with a beard?
No, not that they can tell. Okay. They really only see, his eyes. Claude mentions that the man stinks. He compares the smell to an old, wet, sick dog that just kind of lingers around the man. They load the bodies into the wagon. Sometimes there are other bodies already there, suggesting that there may be an arrangement with multiple funeral homes. But the man driving the wagon rarely says more than 2 or 3 words to the two of them.
Do either of you have any ideas on how one might find who it is that employs these bad-smelling drivers or driver?
Are there any markings on the wagon?
No markings, and neither of them have any clue where you would find this person. Their interest in the situation ends as soon as he drives off. Guillaume, at this point, chimes in and says, "Did you load Desjardins' body into the wagon instead of one of the bodies I earmarked for them?" With a little bit of a chuckle, Claude acknowledges that when Desjardins was brought into the funeral home, it occurred to him to switch the former secretary's remains with one of the bodies earmarked for the wagon.
You think this is some sort of joke?
Well, if the good doctor is buying these cadavers to teach medical students about treating illness, this is an opportunity for Desjardins to do something for the good of the people for a change. And it's not as if Desjardins would know the difference.
Life would have been so much worse for people such as yourself under the old regime, let me tell you. And I would have made it doubly so.
Claude leans back in his chair, relights his pipe, and points out that the king and his ministers are rich enough to take a joke. The two of you have more in common with him and Bruno than you do with any of the royal houses.
I just take one look at Edmund. It might be true for some of us.
Is this where I have to hold Jean-Paul back?
No. This man is clearly ill-informed. I don't think that's a crime. I fear that if the political winds of change go against current regime, then it's good folk such as Claude that may be finding their neck is at risk. But it is not pertinent to our current dilemma, I think.
No, not at this time. And as an aside, out of earshot, we've technically figured out what happened to Desjardins' body at this point.
That's true. No, that's true.
So, we could, in theory, inform Gauthier that Dr. Bouchard has him and let the police do the work.
Does he, though? I think we need to stop Bouchard from whatever it is he's doing, even if it's just for the safety of the city, really. And even if it's just like getting a bunch of flour and blowing it up in his building, we've got to stop him somehow.
Yeah.
But yes, you are right. I think we have got to the bottom of the Desjardins mystery. But I also feel that without us finding this wagon or these people, maybe the wagon was the same wagon that we saw broken on the road. That seems quite feasible. So they may have lost their ability to get additional collections at the end of the month without purchasing a new wagon.
Now, I know you mentioned this before, but was the wagon found en route to the commune?
No, a couple kilometers past it, up into farmland.
Past it. So, in theory, that could be where Bouchard's secret holding area is.
I reckon it was on the way there, I think. But I don't know how we would necessarily track down where that is, unless, I suppose, those maps he'd been requesting from the city, whether he actually got copies and then, marked on a map where it was that he was actually going or looking for. That might be a clue. We would have to probably break into his house to get that. Not that I would suggest such an illegal act, but I'm sure it happens all the time in the colonies. Just saying.
You don't want to put your newfound friends here up to it?
Who? Claude and Bruno?
Yeah.
I think there's only so far I could push that fear, especially Claude. He looks like a right piece of work. I don't think he's going to take any instruction from me. We're a Republican. Spit on the ground. So what do you think? I think we've probably done enough with Guillaume and those guys. I don't think we're going to get anything more out of them.
The thing is, I don't know if we can actually get the doctor to reveal any more than he already has.
No. I think it's either breaking into his house or trying to find somebody we can follow and find out where this other location is.
Edmund, give me an intelligence roll, please.
How did I do?
Success? Yep.
Got it. Good thing I had a...
Sure. If you could take a look at the maps in the assessor's office that Bouchard was consulting, you might be able to figure out what he was looking for.
We can head over there and use Jean-Paul's connections to get in.
Yeah, well, I've already kind of tracked down the records for what it was that it was looking at. That was already the roll I made, so I'm assuming it's just now requesting those same ones is not going to be difficult.
Yeah.
Not a problem at all.
Does that navigate, do you think, to put 2 and 2 together?
Yes, please.
You're on your own there, Edmund. At least I got a success.
Comparing the maps from 1785 and 1795, you see on the 1785 map a small village marked about 20 kilometers north of Reims called Champ de Poitiers. It's in the direction that the wagon was heading, and it's missing from the 1795 map and anything more recent than that.
Do we have any idea what happened to it? Do we dig further into the records, the census records or something like that?
Yes, you can find a statement from a tax collector. I'm going to show it to you.
Testament of Robin Charbonneau.
Yep,
Yes.
Testament. Okay, so you want to read that out, Chad?
Okay, this is the Testament of Robin Charbonneau, tax collector. The next village on my list to visit was Champs de Poitiers, a very small community indeed. Per the taxation records, only 125 people lived there, so I expected it to be a short visit on my part. However, when I arrived in Champs de Poitiers, I found the village deserted, with the houses in poor repair. The streets were empty, with not even dogs or chickens to be seen. I knocked on a few doors, but received no response. Noon came, and the bells of the old church in the center of the village were utterly silent. Fearing that the village had been lost to some horrible illness, I left quickly, lest some lingering miasma infected me as well. End file.
End file, yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Is this from 1895 or post the map?
It is from 1787.
Okay, sorry, I somehow jumped ahead a century.
You're fine.
Now, Robin Charbonneau, I wonder if he's still around. As Reims is an administrative district, probably where he was headquartered out of.
Yes.
Can we make
Go
some
ahead
inquiries?
and- yeah.
What
Someone wants to give me an administrative roll, please.
Okay, that's my thing. Yes, it is a success, just.
All right. Charbonneau did pass away about 10 years ago.
From the miasma?
No. Old age.
Wow, tax collectors get to die of old age? Surely they're not that popular.
Old age induced miasma.
Well, that's something. So I guess we could try going to this abandoned village. It sounds as creepy as all get up, but it might be something there. I suppose if you think about it, if you were trying to build a secret location to hide a bunch of corpses, an abandoned village, there may be some structures there that you could just repurpose for that job.
And nobody's going to be asking questions because there's nobody there to ask questions.
Well, that's an interesting thing to investigate. So I think we just hire another carriage. Actually, we'll take some lunch with us as well, because it sounds like it might be a long trip.
Well, 20 kilometers, right?
That's a 2-bottle trip.
One for your left hand, one for your right.
I'll make a donation at the Temperance Society on the way back to make it all good.
You charter a carriage. It's a little tricky to find. You almost miss the turnoff from the North Road onto the road leading to Champs de Poitiers because the signpost has not been maintained and is barely legible. You arrive at the village. It is getting on towards late afternoon now, and it is a gloomy, despairing ruin. Buildings sag and lean from years of water damage and neglect, their outlines softened by spreading moss and mold. The cobblestones of the village streets have become treacherous to walk over, jutting at odd angles or pushed up as saplings have sprung up between them. There is a faint smell of decay that clings to the village, sickly sweet and earthy, impossible for you to wholly ignore. It's uncomfortably silent. No birds nest in the overgrown trees or beneath the stained eaves of the houses.
I think my little potpourri sniffer thing is coming right out.
Your sachet.
Yep. No way I'm going to put up with this smell.
Just surveying quickly, any tracks or anything?
Give me a search roll, please.
Oh, we both failed.
Nope.
No signs of any recent construction or...
Are there any buildings that look more maintained or less decrepit than everything else? I'm guessing there's not many streets in this little village.
The stone church in the center of the village is the most intact.
So I would say we start there. I assume most of the residential buildings were wood, and unmaintained wooden buildings are going to stick around for maybe 20 years.
Plus, if he's any good religious man, he's going to take his dead bodies to a church. I suppose we'll just have to pay the carriage driver to stay, take him for the rest of the day.
He agrees to stay, but acknowledges that this is an eerie place to be and he would like to not still be here after dark.
That's a fair point. I think we would probably concur. Well, do we have any lanterns or anything like that I suppose we didn't bring anything like that, did we?
Not that you mentioned, no.
Can I make a resource roll to see whether I was smart enough to think of that? I got a success on my resource roll, 9%.
So yes, you do have a lantern and oil and a means to light it.
Well, that's something, because I have a feeling that there may not be a lot of natural light inside that building. So the church, it's just a simple sort of small country church. Is there like a below ground crypt underneath it, or is it just the church? Or what's
As
around
far
it?
as far as you can tell from the outside, it is a simple stone church with an attached churchyard. As you get close to the churchyard, you notice the smell of decay gets stronger, and there's an underlying odor that is oddly familiar, and once you place it, you realize it is very much like the odor of a wet dog.
Much like the drover.
Yes.
This church, at some point, this was a actual village. Did they I assume they had a burying ground?
Yes. The churchyard contains a cemetery, and as you get close, in addition to the smell, you notice it does appear that there's a number of open graves. Nothing that looks freshly dug. More like they've been sitting open for years.
As if these were his first sources of raw material.
We ran out, or someone ran out. I'm not sure. Something more going on than just some doctor, I think, but another party somehow involved in this. I guess we'll try the church doors.
They are locked. When you try them, you can tell they've been nailed shut from inside.
So is there any other entry?
There's probably going to be doors on the transepts, right?
Yes. Likewise, locked and barricaded.
How would somebody nail something shut on all the doors from the inside, and unless they were inside still, which they probably are not? Is there another way? Can they get in from the roof? A tunnel leading underneath it or something like that?
Yeah, nothing obvious.
So, Edmund, do you fancy a climb up the bell tower? Seems like a colonial thing to do.
Sure. I mean,
unless someone would like to try forcing a door.
I don't think either of us have got the strength to do that, really. I definitely don't. I think I might put my shoulder out. That would be... I'd probably have to pass a game of bowls or something like that if I did that. Miss out. And maybe a croquet game I'd have to pass out on the weekend.
What about windows?
There are...
Are they all intact? I mean, I guess they might have been stained glass, but are they intact or just, broken with the lack of repair?
The glass is broken. You can see where boards have been nailed across the inside, although there are some gaps that you can see between them, and the wood is rotting.
That might be something we could force.
And also possibly just peek through right now.
Peeking through...
I guess how much light is on the inside?
There is a decent amount of light on the inside. It looks like part of the roof has fallen in. You can see into the chancel. You can make out a human form slumped with its back against the altar.
Okay, so Jean-Paul, you're the silver-tongued communicator. Would you care to start a dialogue?
We can do that if you like. Just understanding our situation better before we dive into this, because does it look like a person, or are they bigger than person size?
Give me an alertness roll.
Nope.
No.
Oh, you fumbled.
Oh, I got a fumble. Yeah, no, I probably tripped over, made some horrible racket.
Jean-Paul, it's clearly the parish priest. So you feel pretty good about
Wait
having
a
a
minute,
few words with him.
the parish has been empty for 50 years, so how is there a parish priest just sitting there in the middle of the church that's been boarded up? That doesn't sound normal.
No, and he's obviously
Not
not
even,
leaving.
all right. Hey, you there.
There's no response.
He's obviously asleep. There's no sign of any corpses in the actual church.
No signs of any recent human visitation. For what it's worth, the altar and the church looks very dusty, and there's visible water damage along one wall.
This is not really looking like a storehouse for the doctor's purchased cadavers, really, is it?
No, but that's strange that it's boarded up unless the parish priest feared whatever was happening in the village and boarded himself up.
And then just propped himself up
Died.
against the altar and died, and then mummified something.
Yeah.
Well, that would be rather grim, don't you think? I don't think I have enough sachets to deal with that.
What isn't been grim?
I suppose French history has been grim pretty much ever since then, so we can probably try and break down one of these boards over the windows and get in if you like.
Okay.
Maybe we can put this soul to rest, I suppose, if nothing else.